Hello, everybody, and welcome to Project HR, a podcast dedicated to building better workplaces. Project HR is brought to you by Projections, an IRI company. IRI helps organizations navigate workplace challenges, improve employee engagement and productivity, manage labor relations, and implement effective communication strategies to achieve their goals. For more information, you can visit Projections online at projectionsinc.com and IRI at iriconsultants.com. I am Jennifer Oraquah, Director of Business Development for IRI, and your host for today's episode of Project HR. Now, here on Project HR, I've devoted a fair amount of time to discussing the Great Resignation. But today, I want to focus on retention, how to keep the employees you already have simply by listening to your people, the ones who are leaving as well as the ones who remain. My guest today is Chris Coberly. Chris is the CEO of People Element, the industry leader in third-party exit interviews, and an employee experience partner for companies looking to increase engagement, reduce turnover, and enhance culture while driving business results. Chris, thanks so much for joining me today here on Project HR.
Absolutely, Jen. My pleasure.
So, right now, we're in unprecedented times when it comes to resignations, with employees really reevaluating their relationships with their employers. But I love that these unprecedented resignations could actually lead to unprecedented data on why people are leaving. Have we paid much attention to exit interview strategy in the past?
It's really been an evolution over time. I would say that the pioneers of exit interviews really started in the 90s, and then really got more involved in the early 2000s, and at that point it was still very new. That's about when we started providing that as a service for our clients
Mm.
to help them understand why people are leaving, and it's evolved since then. I would say more and more companies are interested in doing it and paying attention to it as a strategy to retain employees. Many decide to do that on their own, or make an effort to do it on their own, and then others go to outside sources to do it. I would say now, in 2022, we see it continue to increase. More and more people continuing to realize that that's a valuable asset that they can use as part of their employee listening strategy.
And I know a lot of companies do exit interviews, but what's the benefit for organizations to actually pay attention to that exit interview feedback?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because a lot of companies have a lot of different employee listening tools that they're doing. They might have an annual engagement survey, or even a pulse that they're doing with their employees throughout the year. They might do things when their employees are onboarding, or they might have manager discussions with their employees. An exit interview can tell you something that nothing else can. And that's really what pushed someone over the edge. What is it that was that trigger event or item that said, yeah, you know what? I might have been thinking about it before. I might have thought about it 2 years ago, but now this is the thing that actually pushed me out of the organization, or at least encouraged me to decide to leave the organization. And you can't really get that answer any other way than in an exit interview once they've left. It's something, if you ask yourself this question, we've all experienced. If you've left an organization at one point or another, it's something, if you say, you know what, yeah, actually, until I actually left, I'm not sure what really was the core reason I left. And that's what we're trying to find out with an exit interview.
So, how have we historically conducted these exit interviews?
A couple different ways. A lot of organizations will have their employees check in with HR when they're leaving the organization, and sometimes that can be really effective. I would say that that's probably the most common thing that we hear and have heard over the years, is that they'll do a check in with HR before they leave. HR can be that sort of trusted place where I can go and share some feedback, and maybe feel like that feedback won't come back to bite me, especially if I want to be open and honest. And that can work. Like I said,
Mhm.
I would say most organizations that reach out to us, it's not working for a couple of reasons. One, they're struggling with getting participation in that process, and two, there's always something about sharing as direct feedback as an employee might want to give with someone internal to the organization that they're leaving, especially if they want to give feedback maybe about the person they reported to, or about
Mm,
decisions
mhm.
leadership is making. They don't want to burn bridges. No one wants to burn bridges. And so you end up sometimes not getting really the full picture that you're looking for in that kind of process.
Mhm. So, do you feel like, in your opinion, have we typically given the data from these interviews the attention it deserves?
No. I guess in short is the answer. Again, if you're going with something that's internal, then it's hard to give it the attention it deserves because you need a critical mass of data to really make good decisions based on it. You can't take the opinion of one person in a vacuum with their experience, with their manager, and say, hey, that's something we can act on as an organization. And so it's not a lack of desire, I don't think. I think it sometimes is a lack of sufficient data and a rich data set to be able to make the right decisions based on the feedback that you're getting. Additionally, I've heard even if there is a rich data set, I do hear from executives sometimes that why would we listen to those that have left the organization? They're gone. Those are not the ones that are important to us. It's very reactive. They've already left the organization. We want to be hearing from the people who are here. And it's a good question, a good concern. What we found is that those who employ a good exit interview process and leverage that data to make decisions are helping their current employees become more engaged and less likely to leave.
Mhm.
And so ultimately, like I said, you can't know what might push people out of your organization without asking that exit interview population. And then we want to take that data and apply it back to our current employee population to make sure that we don't continue to lose more and or create pent up turnover.
That makes sense. So, what are some typical concerns expressed in exit interviews?
Oh, so I mean that's right in my wheelhouse. That's actually the stuff that I love to think about the most. So we look at data sets across all organizations. If I'm answering that way, because it can be very different for example, a healthcare organization versus a maybe a retail store, and what those reasons might be. But if we look across all organizations and start to sum everything up, there are definitely some key things that come out. One key, and I would say maybe the most common thing we hear is that people feel like they don't have opportunities for growth or
Mm,
development. And
mm,
that can be split into two things. Sometimes it's that they don't feel like they have an opportunity for promotion. That can be a little bit harder to solve for an organization. Often, we'll look at ways to encourage them to make sure the communication of the opportunities are good, and that we're looking across departments and across maybe locations within an organization to make sure we retain those employees that might be high performing for us. But also just growth, just professional growth. That doesn't necessarily always mean I want a promotion. It often means I want to learn. I want to
mhm,
be better. I want to
mhm.
know how to do my job better. I want to know how to do a different job, so that maybe I can expand my opportunities within the organization that I can help. And so that might be one of the most common. Another is that they don't get the resources and support they need from the organization. Now, this can be all over the place depending on the kind of organization that you have. Sometimes these are physical things, that tools that they need to be working with. Sometimes it's simply staffing levels. There's not enough time in a day to get done what's needed, and always something good for an organization to be evaluating, are staffing levels at the right place. And sometimes it can cross back over really into, I think, something we've seen is with the Great Resignation and with the pandemic, and that is that companies finding more opportunities to see their employees as a whole person,
Mm,
in that they have a work life and they have a home life, and where can we make sure that we're paying attention to that they have a balance there. And that kind of comes back to having the resources and support they need. Things have been stressful for everyone over the last couple of years. That doesn't mean that it's an organization's job to remove stress, but I think it serves an organization well to make sure that their employees feel like their organization cares and
mhm.
is providing tools for them to manage through that stress so that they can have a good balance in their work and life at home, and be able to navigate through the challenges that they're seeing.
Yeah.
And I'll mention one more, just because I think it's important, especially if you're an executive, and that is that employees sometimes just don't feel valued. They just don't feel valued. And this is another thing that comes out in the exit interviews. If they're at an organization and they just don't feel like the company values what they're doing, values what they're providing, it's hard for them to connect. It's hard for we as humans need something to connect to know that we're a part of something. And the opposite of that is not feeling valued, feeling like it doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter how I do it. If I'm not valued by my organization, then I probably should go find somewhere where I am valued.
Hmm.
That may or may not be true. Keeping in mind that exit interviews, when we collect them, any employee listening that we collect, or organizations collect, that's all perceptions, right? We're just talking about what the employee perceives the reality to be.
Right.
It's good for an organization to ask, is this reality or is this their perception? And if it's really true that they're not valued, maybe it's the best thing for them to get off the bus at that point. But if they are valued and they just don't feel valued, then that's where the opportunity lies for us to adjust those perceptions and see how we can make sure they understand how we feel about them. So
Hmm.
I would say those are some of the big themes we see across exit interviews.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Chris, I'm going to take a quick sponsorship break right now, but when I return, let's discuss the value of stay interviews. So stick around for that.
So, you've provided your supervisors with the training they need to create a positive environment and keep your company union-free. But can they put that knowledge into action? Wise Words e-learning will teach your supervisors how to respond appropriately to tough employee questions about unions, including questions about dues, collective bargaining, promises, and more. Based on solid adult learning theory, Wise Words guides supervisors, helping them practice their skills in a fun and engaging format that sticks with them over time. Wise Words e-learning is delivered in microbursts of learning and is available online 24/7. Your leaders can practice their skills anytime and anywhere there's an internet connection on any device. Wise Words training will protect your company from ULP charges and give your leaders the confidence to connect with employees. Learn more and sign up for a demo at projectionsinc.com today.
I'm back with Chris Coberly, CEO of People Element. Now, Chris, if the goal of an exit interview is to learn what motivated a particular individual to leave, are the goals of a stay interview the same to find out why they stay?
Sure, you could. I think you could put it that way. Yeah, it's a little bit more in depth than that. I think you want to simultaneously in a stay interview. What we're trying to do is understand really what are the roadblocks that are currently in place that would keep you from feeling like, yeah, this is a place I want to be for a long period of time, semi permanently, or indefinitely. What are those things that right now you're saying, yeah, this is the thing that when I wake up in the morning and I'm going to work, this is the thing that makes me think, maybe I want to look for another job. So we want to identify those specific items in a stay interview. We also want to find out at the same time, what is it that if in your current reality, if this occurred, then I really would feel like I wanted to leave. Or if this occurred, I really would feel like I want to leave. So we can
Mm-hmm.
identify pain points that we can see might come in the future and can see if those are things we can avoid. We can't avoid everything and we can't make everyone happy. But in the end, any of these employee listening tools, including Stay Interview, it's a numbers game
Mm-hmm.
where if we can really listen to our employees and understand what creates that roadblock right now to wanting to stay here and contribute indefinitely, and what might create it in the future, and we're able to resolve those, then or manage through them with the employee,
Mm-hmm.
then that allows us to reduce at least the potential for turnover with that person, and increase the potential for engagement from that person as well. And that's ultimately the goal. Again, not everybody can you do that with, but if you're having these conversations, you can at least eliminate some of them.
So, how have we historically, how have we conducted these stay interviews?
So stay interviews are an interesting thing. They can be done a couple different ways. Stay interviews often have been done and can be done by a manager. The only downside to a manager conducting a stay interview, meaning that a direct report manager, is that the employee, depending on the relationship there, may or may not feel comfortable really telling them that what their barriers are, what their pain points are in terms of their engagement or long-term desire to be employed by the company or work at the company. Especially if one of those barriers is the manager.
Mm-hmm.
And that can often be the case. Sometimes it's just the relationship you have with your manager. So that's the way it can be done. That can be done, periodically, where the manager's checking in and trying to resolve those problems. Sometimes that can be very effective. And also, like I said, there can be trust issues there. There also sometimes can just be competency issues with that manager, not knowing, or competency and or authority issues for that manager, where they might get this feedback but don't know what to do or how to do anything about the feedback that they're getting, because they may not have the authority or the experience to do it. And so, um, I would say that's the most common way state interviews have been done in the
Mhm.
past, outside of hiring external resources to do it and help with it.
So, how often should we conduct stay interviews?
Annually, at least,
Hmm.
I would say, and I think that for most employee listening things, we would say that annually at least, because so many things can change in a year, and it's a good time frame to make sure you can take action on things. I would say at most, probably 3 months. You might hear a different answer from others, but philosophically, our approach is to ask as often as we can respond.
Hmm.
So if you can ask monthly and ask an employee every month the questions you want to in a stay interview, and be able to address the things that they're identifying within a month, then great. Do it monthly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there are diminishing returns eventually, if you do it too often. But I think the most important thing is being able to act. And if you can do it quarterly and be able to respond and act and take action based on what they're giving you, then do it quarterly. But annually is safe for sure to be able to take action, especially for large organizations where things tend to move a little bit slower. You have to get more people involved. I think that's where our suggestion is, do it do it at least annually, but make sure no matter what, no matter how often you do it, that you do it in, give yourself enough time between that you can respond and react to the items that they're bringing up, and address them.
So, do we need to conduct both types of interviews to get a full picture of the working atmosphere?
In an ideal world, I think both are great. I think that's, if you have the resources to do that, and or internal or external resources to be able to do both, you're getting the most full picture for sure. You're understanding ultimately what's pushing people out of the organization, and that gives you a data set that you can split and cut and react to all across the organization, and specifically, by whatever demographic group you want to look at, by department or by job title, or whatever makes sense, by location. And at the same time, if you're doing stay interviews, that's something that allows you to address things more specifically, either at an individual level or at the organizational level, but with somebody who's in the organization right now that you can save. So you don't have to go through that cost of turnover, and go get somebody that you're going to spend more money on to get than you would have to save.
Mm.
And so I think that's the ideal strategy for sure.
Yeah, and I think we've talked sort of historically about how these interviews have been conducted, and it's kind of a heavy lift. What do we ask? Do we need to do both types? All of this, but your company's developed a platform that simplifies both of these processes. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So maybe the best way to answer that is to give you a little history. I mentioned earlier we started doing exit interviews in the early 2000s. We've been around a long time, since 1988. Started as a really a consulting firm working on organizational effectiveness, with some organizations. And one of our clients asked us in the late 90s if we could do exit interviews for them. And so we developed that capability working with Colorado State University to validate our question sets and all of that.
Mm.
And it really just blew up from there. And it allowed us to start working across industries and organizations to help them strategically address turnover and engagement in their employee population. Well, as time went on, initially what really was desired from us was data. We just need data. We don't have enough data. We don't know the answer to the question why. We need to know the answer to the question why. As the late 2008, 9, 10 came along, and then into 2011 and 12, technology really started to help answer that question. And it got to a point where a lot of organizations have data, they just get paralyzed in it. They don't know what to do with it, and what do I do next? And do I give this to my manager? And how does the manager know what to do with it? And which thing do they decide to focus on? How do they know which thing to focus on? What are they going to do about that thing? And speed of that data became very important. So to make all that long story background short, we decided in half a dozen years ago, I guess more than that now, to develop a platform that we believed would get rid of some of the barriers that our clients were experiencing as we worked with them on these things, doing these employee listening processes with them. We thought, we can make this more efficient for them and faster for them, so they can get what they need faster. So now we've built a platform, and our primary goal with that platform is to get our clients to action, get them from, I don't know what to address with this particular group or across our organization, I don't know why people are leaving, to here's what I need to do about it, and get them from point A to point B as quickly as possible without spending a ton of energy on it. And so our platform really is built to be able to do that listening, do the stay interviews, help them with that process, help them have an automated tool that will gather that feedback for them. The same goes for their exit interviews, have the automated tool that will gather the feedback for them. So they're not spending time getting people to do it, and instead they're spending time on acting on it. That data comes in, it's reported, it's dissected, it can be automatically sent to whoever needs the information, and then they can act. And the tool helps with that too. It uses all the best practices that we have seen work in our client organizations over the many years we've been doing this. And it says, based on your data set, this is what you need to focus on. This is what you need to spend your energy on. And if you do, then those numbers are going to change. Then your turnover is going to go down. Your engagement's going to go up. And ultimately, that's what our clients want to see.
Excellent. Good stuff. Chris, it's time for another quick break, but we'll be right back after this. You're listening to the Project HR podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Oraqua, and my guest today is Chris Koberly, CEO of People Element. We're back, and clearly, Chris, to build any kind of data set, you need to have a maximum engagement from employees and soon-to-be former employees. Does use of the People Element platform impact the number of people participating in exit and stay interviews and surveys?
Yes, I would say this is probably one of the greatest benefits of using our platform or any external platform that does it right, to gather feedback from your employees. One, it creates a little bit of a barrier for the employee in terms of trust, so that they can be confident that they're giving feedback. It's confidential, and they don't have to worry about the bridges they might burn, which is what you want as an organization. You really want their honest feedback. If you really want to know why someone might have left, then you really want their honest feedback. You don't want to worry about having your feelings hurt about what they might say, because this is something you want to address if you truly want to address it. So there's something about the confidentiality there that it will increase participation. But additionally, tools like ours, including ours, employ various data collection approaches that allow you to maximize that data set, and get a really rich data set. And the reason that's important is because if you want to break down the data and look at it in little parts, like the people who report to this manager, I want to see what the data is for them. You need a rich data set to be able to do that. Otherwise, your confidentiality isn't there and you can't look at that data. And so we use any electronic means that we can employ, email, SMS, to have them participate. We also can do kiosks where people can go to a computer on site. Let's say they're in manufacturing and on the floor, they might have a computer. That person can just go there and complete their survey while they're on site, if it's a current employee. Mm-hmm. Or even as an exiting employee, maybe they might go fill that out in HR before they leave, instead of doing an interview with a person, or again, that confidentiality might not feel right. They could do it there on a computer and fill it out. And the other way is we have a team of interviewers who will actually do outbound calling, especially to hard to reach populations is where that's effective. And we would say that exit employees are hard to reach populations because they're gone. And so they don't use your current employee, your current email addresses. So we might do outbound calling to them to collect their feedback, which is always a good experience for them. It gives them a chance to sort of give their feedback and feel like it's with someone who's not partial to what they're saying or how they're saying it. And our team does a great job with that. The difference, just as a data point, the difference between someone doing it internally, we usually hear from our clients that doing it internally, they're getting somewhere between 10 and 30% participation. And our on exit interviews, specifically in this case, our participation rates for exit interviews tend to range between the 60 to 75% range in terms of collecting feedback. So that's the difference you see again from those aspects I'm talking about, the confidentiality and the means that we're going out to them to give them opportunities to respond.
And so we've gathered all this fantastic data. How is it useful to me? How's the data presented to the employer by People Element?
Yeah, so we have a reporting side of our system that they can look at it. Like I've said several times, they can slice and dice in many ways. This is from a sort of a global scale or level, I'll say. So a super user or maybe the HR team might want to look at all the data across the entire organization and see that in the reporting. The tools are interactive and a bit customizable, and it just summarizes it all down to make it really easy to understand what the feedback is saying. But I think one of the most powerful things about our platform is that you can also give access to your managers so that your manager can log into the system. And when they do, they're just going to see their data set in the same reporting that you might see, but it'll just be their direct reports that they're looking at the results of. And when it does that, the other thing it will do is it will tell them, if you do nothing else, if you don't want to go do all the play in our reporting where you can look at it all kinds of different ways and do some analytics if you want to. If you don't want to do that, which most managers don't because they have other jobs that they're working on and it's not all that interesting to them most of the time. Here are the 3 things based on your data that we think you should focus on. And the system will tell them that. And then it will tell them, and if you want to focus on this, here are the things that have been successful in the past for organizations when they're trying to address this item. So it gives them recommendations. They can just click on it, hit a check mark, and it goes into an action plan, and they can take that and start acting. And again, that's our goal. Our goal is to get them from not knowing what to do, what the feedback is, and what action to take, all the way through to here's what I can do tomorrow as quickly as possible, so that we can get past kind of the paralysis by analysis and just get to taking action. And our belief and what has been proven out with our clients is if we can get everyone in an organization or most managers in an organization doing something, anything tomorrow to improve the experience that their employees are having, that's when the metrics change. That's when you're going to see a reduction in turnover. That's when you're going to see an improvement in engagement, and then see the business results that result from those things.
So if any of these issues are hitting home, what can we do? How can we turn things around?
The most basic answer I can give, or the simplest in terms of a next step, is what's your listening strategy? Ask yourself that question. What is our employee listening strategy? How are we making sure that we're hearing from our employees and we're hearing from the different perspectives that might exist so that we can take action? What do we know about why our people are leaving? Do we know enough? Do we know enough about why they're leaving from this part of the organization versus this part of the organization? What do we know about what might make them leave, so that we can empower our executive team with that? And that's where we come back to stay interviews. If I can tell our executive team, hey, if we make this change, we may have an unintended consequence of turnover that we didn't anticipate. And we can only know that if we're doing those stay interviews. Same goes for any other listening approach, like maybe an annual engagement survey or an ongoing employee engagement survey or an onboarding or new hire survey, so you can understand how the onboarding experience is. All of those are the primary, I would say, tools that you should ask yourself, do we have a strategy for this? What is our strategy? How do we take that information and then go ahead and use it? How do we supply it to the right people so that it can be executed on? And how do we get everyone involved in addressing the things that come up? Because they're going to be, again, different things for one department versus another department, and how do we get them involved in addressing those items?
So if I want to learn more about you, about People Element, or about your platform, where can we go?
PeopleElement.com is a good place to start.
Sure.
We have other social media accounts that you can look up as well if you decide you want to follow us or something. But I would say PeopleElement.com is the best place to start. It gives you a good idea of who we are, what we do, how we approach things, and I think that Ultimately, our goal is to help others. It's to help our client organizations achieve the goals that they're trying to achieve, especially as it relates to retention and engagement. And that's because we want to also ultimately help employees have better experiences, so that, again, they can achieve that good sort of whole life balance that they might be looking for, where their stressors aren't too much to overcome, or aren't too much to deal with in the big picture of their life. And I hope you see that through our website, and that it's demonstrated there. Mm-hmm. But if you don't, we'd love to talk to you. Feel free to reach out. There are ways to do that through our website. And we'd love to talk to you about it and at least have a chat. With no pressure. Again, we want to help. And so sometimes we're not the exact right fit. There are things people are looking for, and we'll tell you that. We're pretty upfront. Again, we want to help. And so if we're not the right fit, we're going to send you a place that is going to be the right fit for you, and give you some ideas on how you might solve the problem you're looking to solve.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I want to be sure to let everybody know that the Project HR team has done all the hard work for you, listened back to this episode, and taken fantastic notes. And those notes and links will all be included in this episode's companion guide. So be sure to unlock that today at projectionsinc.com/podcast. Right now, though, Chris, it is time for our lightning round of questions. And these are questions I ask of every guest of the podcast. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So our first question is always a topic showdown. In this episode, we've been talking about exit and stay interviews. So in your opinion, which of these songs best speaks to the spirit of this discussion? Nancy Sinatra's These Boots Are Made for Walking, or Lisa Loeb's Stay, or The Clash's Should I Stay or Should I Go?
This was easy. The Clash's Should I Stay or Should I Go?
Hey, I'm with you right there. All right. Next question. What is the best book that you've read recently?
It's called The Rabbit Effect. Great book. Recommend it to anybody.
Very good. What is your favorite thing about the work that you do?
Easily the people I work with. We have a great team of people who want to learn and try hard to do the right thing, and I'm proud to work with them.
Very nice. And what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Focus on what you can control.
I like that. Good advice. All right. And lastly, who or what inspires you?
Solutions. People or organizations that are focused on arriving at solutions to problems without too much bias or agenda behind it. I'm always inspired by those who are seeking solutions rather than agendas.
Very nice. Thanks so much for joining me today on this week's episode of Project HR, Chris.
Thank you.
And thanks to our listeners. Once again, this is your reminder to grab that companion for this episode at projectionsinc.com/podcast. And if you'd like to be on Project HR, or you know someone who would, feel free to email us at projecthr@iriconsultants.com. And last but certainly not least, remember that a new episode of Project HR drops every Thursday. Subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode. I hope you'll drop us a line, leave us a review, or give Project HR a handful of stars wherever you get your content. That's it for me for now. Let's make it a great day at work.